Welcome, everyone. Today we're doing something a bit different. We're not just digging through documents. We're actually going to narrate some real-life accounts. Stories that really open your eyes to some of the darker, more unsettling corners of our world.
Yeah, things that feel quite close to home sometimes.
Exactly. They remind you why understanding these things, even when it's tough, is just, well, it's important.
Absolutely.
We've pulled together sources that really lay bare some shocking events, some baffling ones, and some, frankly, heartbreaking ones. Our goal here is to walk you through these stories, pull out the crucial bits, and try to make some sense of what really happened. So let's start this journey into some truly disturbing but compelling narratives. We're kicking off with something that's quite chilling, but incredibly vital. It's an FBI initiative called the Endangered Child Alert Program, or ECAP.
Right, ECAP.
And what they do is they directly ask the public for help identifying clues from actual child exploitation material.
It's quite direct, yeah.
It really is. And the powerful part is how they release censored media images, details, and ask you, the public, to step forward. Any little piece of information.
Even if it seems tiny.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They focus on two main things: identifying John and Jane Does, people who might have answers about these kids, and, this is key, identifying objects and places connected to the abuse.
And it's really incredible how they use image analysis here.
Tell us about that.
Well, they know that even the tiniest detail, in the background of a photo, maybe a specific pattern on a blanket, or the way a dresser looks, a logo on a hat,
Right.
that could be the single thing that cracks the case open. It just shows that really no piece of information is too small when you're trying to protect children.
The collective observation.
Yeah.
It's powerful. Let's talk about some of the kinds of images the FBI puts out there.
Oh, okay.
They've shared things like a red cap with some unknown logo. Seems simple, maybe, but someone might instantly know it.
Could be very distinctive to the right person.
Totally. But then there are much vaguer clues, too, like requests to identify what looks like a wooden dresser. They even highlighted the orientation of the handles as something that might be recognizable.
That level of detail is amazing.
Isn't it? And other images show just parts of scenes, an adult man's leg, maybe in a child's room. You can see toys, patterned blankets, even a Minnie Mouse doll in the background.
Wow.
Another one showed a wooden headboard. It had this distinct carving, sun, moon, stars, and below it, dark blue pillows or maybe a striped blanket.
So specific.
Or cluttered rooms, a blue chair, maybe a wire shelf with board games, a pile of books with a beanie on the floor next to it. Very specific collections of items. There was one showing a child in a multicolored owl shirt, a long sleeve one, with a really distinctive carpet or blanket visible too.
Right.
And they zoom right in sometimes.
Yeah.
Like a close-up of a child's wrist with two bracelets and a hair tie, hoping someone spots a familiar piece of jewelry,
Or even a mark, potentially.
Yeah.
And it's not just objects, is it? They look for clues about location, too.
That's right, like that partial image, I think it just had the word middle, clearly visible.
Yeah, I remember that one. Potentially part of Williams Middle or something similar.
Right, with numbers, a partial logo, suggesting a school maybe, blue and white colors. Any lead on that could be huge.
It just shows, like the FBI strategy highlights, that for the right person, a seemingly random detail can just blow a case wide open.
Absolutely. So the message here for you listening is if any detail like this, anything you see or hear about ever rings a bell, don't hesitate. Contact the authorities.
Immediately.
And you can also help just by spreading the word. They often have downloadable wanted posters on the ECAP site to get these images out there.
Visibility is key.
Okay, so from those sort of anonymous pleas for help, we turn to a case that, well, it really makes you scratch your head about the perpetrator's thinking.
Huh?
This is the story of Matthew Haverly. It happened in Camptown, Pennsylvania a few years back. May 31st, 2018. Someone walking by spots a body floating in Wyalusing Creek. Small town, obviously shaken up, police arrived.
Right.
But here's the truly bizarre part. An on-scene reporter from WNEP, the local news, interviews a nearby resident for comment.
And?
She has no idea she's talking to the killer himself. 38-year-old Matthew Haverly.
No way. What did he say?
He actually starts theorizing about big city hitmen dumping a body in their quiet rural area. Makes up this whole story about outsiders.
Wow. That's something else. This case is just a profound example of a criminal with absolutely zero foresight. It's almost arrogant in a baffling way.
How so?
Well, the victim, 60-year-old Patricia Haverly, that was Matthew's own mother.
Oh my God.
In their house. directly across the street from where her body was found, wrapped in a black tarp under the Route 706 bridge.
Across the street?
Yeah. Her second shoe was found even closer to their front door. So to go on camera spinning this tale about outsiders when the body would obviously be identified within hours and linked straight back to him, it's just mind-boggling.
What was he thinking?
Desperation, delusion. It's hard to say.
So Matthew eventually confessed to the police. He said he and his mother argued earlier that day.
Okay.
He claims she tried to hit him, he pushed her, and then he says he blacked out.
Blacked out, right.
Just hours after that TV interview, he was arrested. Police searched a shed nearby.
And found
a tarp matching the one on the body. And a wheelbarrow, presumably used to move for the short distance.
That makes sense.
The autopsy showed bruises that lined up with his story, but also defensive ones. Cause of death was multiple blows to the head.
Yeah, the legal outcome here is quite striking, though.
How so?
Despite the evidence suggesting planning, the tarp, the wheelbarrow, Matthew Haverly pleaded no contest to involuntary manslaughter.
Involuntary.
Along with abusing a corpse, tampering with evidence, weapon possession. Prosecutors probably went for the sure conviction rather than risking a trial, maybe getting a lesser outcome. He got a maximum sentence of 14 years. He's in SCI, Dallas, Pennsylvania. But yeah, his actions, the interview, the sloppy cover-up, definitely makes him stand out as, well, what some called a particularly dim criminal.
Dim is one word for it. Okay, our next story shifts gears and takes us to Malaysia. And it touches on the right to religious freedom, but in a really disturbing way.
Okay.
This is the story of Pastor Raymond Koh. He was a pastor, obviously, but also ran a charity called Hope Community. Help the sick, the vulnerable.
Sounds like good work.
Absolutely. But despite that, he and his wife Susanna started getting threats. Bullets sent to them, an envelope with anthrax. A message saying, "We want to kill you."
That's terrifying. What was behind that? Well, you really have to understand the context of Malaysia's laws here. About 61% of the population is Muslim.
Right.
And while Christianity is legal, it's actually forbidden to try and convert a Muslim. And apostasy leaving Islam is a serious crime.
So a very sensitive environment.
Extremely. So for someone like Pastor Koh, whose charity work might involve interacting with Muslims, even if he wasn't actively trying to convert them, it could easily be perceived that way. Plus, the state enforces a very specific version of Islam, even banning Shia Islam. It adds another layer of complexity.
And things that happened before.
Yes.
Back in 2011, police actually raided a fundraiser Koh hosted. They singled out the Muslims present for questioning, sent them for re-education, even though there was no proof of proselytizing.
Wow. So there was already pressure.
Definitely. Then, February 13th, 2017, things escalate dramatically. CCTV footage captures Raymond Koh's abduction. Broad daylight.
Abduction.
Yeah. A really well-orchestrated operation. Multiple vehicles involved. Took only 40 seconds.
40 seconds.
He hasn't been seen since.
Just vanished. And this wasn't an isolated thing, was it?
No, not at all. When Koh's family pushed for answers, the authorities just sort of repeated allegations about him trying to convert Muslims. But then, Malaysia's National Human Rights Commission, Suhakam, they investigated. And they looked into 4 similar cases of enforced disappearances.
Who else? There was Joshua Himley and Ruth Satepu, a Christian couple. They disappeared in November 2016. And Amrit Chimut, a social activist who was Shia Muslim, he also disappeared that same month.
And the pattern.
In every case, when the wives went to the police, they were basically met with accusations against their husbands about wrong religious teachings.
Chilling. What did the commission find? After 18 months, Suhakam concluded that the special branch that's an intelligence agency linked to the Royal Malaysia Police was behind the disappearances of Pastor Raymond Koh and Amrit Chimut.
State involvement, that's huge.
Huge. But during the inquiry, officers involved would often claim they couldn't remember, or they'd cite the Official Secrets Act to avoid answering. Police gave conflicting stories. At one point, they even blamed a drug smuggling gang. Suhakam called that claim an affront to common sense and logic.
Yeah, that sounds flimsy.
Especially since they noted a car seen at Koh's abduction was also seen at Amrit Chimut's house around the time he disappeared.
Ah, a link.
And that car was traced to an 18-year police veteran who then suddenly became untraceable.
Right. So official findings point fingers directly at the state. But what actually happened? What were the consequences?
That's the deeply frustrating part. Very little, it seems. The police later came up with a new suspect, a rideshare driver who frankly looks like a scapegoat.
So no real answers.
None. The whereabouts of all 4 missing people, Koh, Chimit, the Hamleys, it's still a complete mystery.
And the wider significance. I mean, it shows how even when official bodies point to state involvement in disappearances, getting actual accountability is incredibly difficult. Families are just left in this devastating limbo.
Yeah, it's deeply unsettling. For anyone listening, if this lack of resolution strikes a chord, Susanna Koh, Raymond's wife, has started legal action against the Malaysian government. There's also a petition online at www.releaseraymond.com.
Good to know there are ways to show support.
Okay, our next story. It takes us back a bit to a time when perhaps fame and influence could silence victims more easily. We're talking about the British glam rock musician, Paul Francis Gadd, much better known as Gary Glitter.
Right, huge star in the 70s.
Massive, 11 top 10 hits in a row. But his public downfall really began in 1997, not for his music, but for something shocking found on his computer.
What happened?
He took his laptop into a tech store, said it had a software fault, and he specifically told the technician not to look at his files.
Of course.
Made the technician look, and he found thousands of hardcore images of child abuse.
Oh, wow. Okay, so caught red-handed then.
Yeah.
I think so. But the immediate aftermath is what's really striking about this initial discovery.
How so?
Despite being caught with that material, Glitter was initially released without charge.
Really?
Yeah. And while the media went crazy, the truly disturbing part is that ticket sales for his upcoming tour actually went up amidst all the controversy. Yeah. It really highlights a troubling public attitude back then, you know? Like celebrity status somehow offered protection, or maybe just morbid curiosity took over. It's a stark contrast to the kind of accountability we thankfully expect more often today.
That's unbelievable. So what happened legally then? He was eventually convicted, November 1999, possession of child sexual abuse material. But he only served 2 months in prison.
2 months.
2 months. When he got out, he said he had deep regret, wanted to put it all behind me.
Right.
But living his life, for him, meant leaving the UK. He went to Asia, first Cuba, then Cambodia, which was known back then as a haven for child predators.
Oh, no.
And finally Vietnam, places where his profile was lower and the chances for him to exploit children were tragically much higher.
So he just continued the pattern elsewhere.
Seems so.
Yeah.
His behavior abroad was disturbingly consistent. In Vietnam, he was accused of abuse again in 2005. He got caught trying to flee the country, was detained, and eventually sentenced to 3 years in prison there for molesting 2 young girls.
3 years.
British campaigners were glad he was convicted, but they pointed out it was the minimum sentence possible under Vietnamese law for those crimes. It just shows this relentless pursuit of victims across borders, a deeply ingrained predatory behavior.
Just awful. Did UK justice ever catch up properly?
It did, eventually. After he was released from prison in Vietnam in 2008, he tried to avoid going back to the UK, but he ended up landing in London.
Yeah.
Taken into custody immediately. Ordered to register as a sex offender.
Okay, so on the register.
Yes. Then fast forward to 2012, he gets arrested again, this time as part of Operation U-Tree.
Ah, U-Tree. That was the big UK police investigation into historical sex offenses, right?
Yeah.
Mainly focused on Jimmy Savile.
Exactly. Savile and his associates were the main focus, but the investigation's scope widened, and it pulled Gary Glitter back in.
For older crimes.
Yes. As a result of U-Tree, February 5th, 2015, Gary Glitter was convicted of crimes he'd committed back in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
Attempted rape, multiple counts of indecent assault, and sex with a girl under 13. He got 16 years. He's still incarcerated.
A long road to justice there.
Okay, our final story tonight. This one takes us into, well, a really uncomfortable space where opinions on justice get incredibly divided.
Right.
It's the story of Karina Smith, a British mother who, you could say, took the law into her own hands.
Okay, what happened?
July 14th, 2020.
Yeah.
Just after midnight. Karina Smith goes into her garden, gets a bucket. She fills it with this thick mixture of sugar and boiling water.
Sugar and boiling water. Why sugar?
It creates this sort of sticky, tar-like substance. When mixed with boiling water, it clings to the skin, makes the burns much, much worse.
Oh, gosh.
She carries this bucket into her downstairs bedroom and pours it over her sleeping husband, Michael Baines.
Oh, my goodness.
And she just leaves the house, walks 9 doors down to a neighbor's, and apparently says, crying, I've hurt him really bad. I think I've killed him.
Wow. And the husband?
Police found Baines in, quote, excruciating pain. Skin peeling off. He had severe burns on over a third of his body because of that clinging mixture. He spent 5 weeks in the hospital. Multiple skin grafts, surgeries, but he passed away on August 18th, 2020.
Just awful. What could possibly lead to something like that? There has to be more to it.
There is. And this is the crucial missing piece you mentioned. It explains Karina's actions, though it doesn't excuse them legally, of course.
Right.
Initial reports just called it an extreme reaction to a family spat, or maybe a rumor. But the real story came out later, from a conversation Karina had had with her daughter.
What did the daughter say?
In that conversation, Michael Baines, her husband, the victim of the attack, was accused of sexually abusing both his daughter and their late son, Craig.
Oh, no.
For many years when they were children, was the quote used.
And the son was deceased.
Yes. Craig, who'd had a troubled life, tragically took his own life back in 2007. He was 25.
This is heartbreaking.
And here's the devastating part. Craig had allegedly told his mother, Karina, the day before he died.
Mom, he's a pedophile!
But Karina said she misunderstood him at the time.
Oh, that's unimaginable. So years later, the daughter confirms it.
Exactly. Karina makes this devastating connection between what her daughter just told her and her son's dying words from years before.
I can't even fathom that moment.
The judge at her trial, Amanda Yip, acknowledged Karina's difficulty processing it all, but also the clear link she made between Craig's words and the daughter's disclosure. People described Karina as being livid and fuming at the thought of what had been done to her children.
Understandably. So what did Karina say about the attack itself?
She admitted to it. She confessed to manslaughter, saying she just lost control and vengeance wasn't her actual intent.
But the prosecution...
They pushed for murder. They argued the act of mixing the sugar and boiling water showed forethought, deliberation.
Right. That mixture is particularly nasty. It implies planning.
It does.
And this case really highlights that tension, doesn't it, between the legal system and how the public might see justice. Because while there wasn't hard evidence of Michael Baines' abuse presented in court, that wasn't the focus of the murder trial itself, the prosecutors did accept that Karina genuinely believed these allegations were true.
Right. Her belief was acknowledged.
But despite that, and despite her claiming she didn't intend to kill him, she was found guilty of murder, sentenced to life with a minimum of 12 years.
And public reaction.
Online, you see a lot of sympathy for Karina. Many people feel she should be freed, basically arguing that Baines, if the allegations were true, got what he deserved. It sparks this huge ethical debate, you know?
Yeah.
Does the horror of the alleged past crimes justify taking lethal vengeance outside the law?
It's incredibly complex.
And deeply troubling territory.
And ultimately, with Michael Baines dead, and his son Craig also gone, the full truth about those abuse allegations, it's likely we'll never know for sure.
The story remains incomplete.
But the devastating impact of those hidden secrets, leading to such a tragic, violent end, that's undeniable. So we've just walked through 5 pretty extraordinary and disturbing stories. Yeah, quite a range.
From the FBI's really vital hunt for tiny clues in awful circumstances, to that baffling criminal blunder by Matthew Haverly, the chilling reality of state-suspected disappearances in Malaysia.
Right.
The long, dark shadow cast by a fallen music icon like Gary Glitter. And finally, that incredibly difficult story of a mother's desperate, tragic act of retribution.
Each one really makes you think.
They really do. They're not just isolated incidents, are they? They're stark reminders that, well, true horror, profound human experiences, both terrible and complex, can be lurking just around the corner in seemingly ordinary lives.
Absolutely. Hidden depths everywhere.
And each story, I think, really underlines why it's important to look closer sometimes, to ask questions and try to understand the complex layers of reality that often hide just beneath the surface.
Yeah, peeling back those layers.
So we hope these narratives, unsettling as they are, have maybe offered you a deeper understanding of the world around us.
Hopefully some perspective, yeah. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning.
Take care.